Hi, it's Matt from ClickBid, and getting back into the podcast. I haven't done one in a while. It's a little rusty, so you'll have to bear with me a little bit, but I'll be brief. And I just want to talk through an event that I did this spring. Look at some of the numbers, kind of see how it breaks down. Um, Hopefully, this is helpful for you. This really made a lot of sense to me, so I thought I would share it. So, I did an event. It's a small charity. That's one that I care a lot about. I've worked with for a couple of years, so I like to get on the other side of the table, as I call it, and kind of see how the event comes together, the hardships, the challenges, and so on, not just the software. So anyway, looking at this, let's just kind of quickly go through it. It's a pretty boring spreadsheet, really basic, but I think it kind of tells the story. So we've got our expenses: the venue, ClickBid, bar, catering, miscellaneous, band. We're looking at about 12,500 in costs that we're going to probably spend on this event. If I, the catering, a side note here is we just did appetizers. We didn't do a meal. So the catering was lower than, what plated meal would be. But looking at the statistics of the event when it actually happened, we had about 180 guests registered for the event. We had about 102 auction items. We had one signature item, and this was something I just called out. It was a very high value item that came in way beyond any other item that we had in our auction. Again, this was a small charity, and I think the average ticket price for an auction item was anywhere between like $50 and $80 in fair market value. Some on the higher end, but then some 20, 40, $50. This one was worth $24,000. It was a vacation package that somebody donated, which was incredible, and we weren't sure how this was gonna go, so we actually made it a blind bid. I did a little LinkedIn post on what a blind bid is, and it's in a nutshell, you can place as many bids as you want on the item for any dollar amount. Every bid will be accepted as if you were writing it down and slipping it into a sealed box, and then we pick the highest bid whenever it was placed. If that's the highest bid gets to win the item. The nice thing is, for us, we didn't really know if this was going to go over well or if it was going to be, left unbid. With blind bidding, you don't have to ever reveal that the item sold, only to the person who won it. So this was great. It also gives people confidence if they want to put some big money into something without getting a bunch of recognition or putting a paddle in the air, then they can do it kind of anonymously. So I called it out just to have it. We did have 2 quantity items. This was great. I would recommend this for anybody. We had a donor give kind of a box of alcohol, mixed bag of spirits from distilleries around the state, and we put them all in brown bags. This was an idea that one of the organizers had. Brilliant idea. You pick a bag, you get what you get. And so there were about 15 of those. And then we had gift cards. Gift cards are really popular for charity events. And so we took those, we put them in envelopes and put them on an actual live tree. And then people, that was the giving tree. So people could pick an envelope. The value was anywhere between $25 and $50. And we sold them each for $25. So those were those 2 quantity we call items. People who bid 94. This is a really good number because I wouldn't double it. But when we track bidders, we usually track a bidding entity. Now that's oftentimes a couple. So if my wife and I attend an event, we're not going to bid separately, although we actually did at this event. That was funny. But a lot of times couples will bid together most of the time. And so while I wouldn't double this number, to say that we had 94 of 180, that is a good number of people who participated. What it says to me, more importantly, is I can take away that we had a really good mix of silent auction items. I like to think of silent auction items are as a donation for people who just don't have a high amount of money to give away. So, some people will give away big fluffy dollars in a live auction or a big paddle raise. But for people like me who, we have money, we want to share with the charity, but we just don't have a lot of it. And it'd be really cool if I could take home a grill or an electronic device or something that I won in addition to making a gift to the charity. So when I see this number, it says to me that we really did appeal to the group of people at the event with the right number and the right kind of pricing of items. In fact, you can kind of reinforce that by saying only 6 items went unbid. So, out of 102, 6 went home with a charity. And, having done enough events and talking to charities, I've seen them all say, "Man, we don't wanna take anything home. We want it all gone tonight. Take it, win it." In fact, sometimes even when an auction closes, if there are unbid items, the charity can sell them and say, "Hey, who wants to bid on it? Who wants to place the minimum bid and take this item home tonight?" So, we can make that happen as well. Now, number of bids, 670. On average, that's 4 per item. What I like about, electronic bidding, kind of can reduce the number of bids, but make them more meaningful. We usually say between 10 and maybe 12 bids per item. To when you do a bid sheet, you want to have about 10 to 12 lines that people can put their dollar amounts on. And so, in this case, what this says to me is that people they would put their bid higher. They would skip a bunch of increments and go right up to, the next, the dollar amount that they're willing to pay, or place a max bid, which is great. You can put in, you know, you can increment the item 6 or 7 bids with one single bid, and, that maximum is out there waiting, until somebody gets you to that number, or it just places bids for you on your behalf. We really like max bidding. Now, this statistic was really cool. I like to see this as bids before the event. How many people placed, or how many bids were placed before the day of the event? And that's, 82. In fact, before the doors opened, it's even more. It's probably closer to 100, when looking at the data. That is great to see. So a sixth of your bidding activity, or, maybe a little less than a sixth, happened before the doors even opened. What it says to me is that, one, the first bid on any auction item is the biggest, because the starting bid is usually 35 to 40% of the fair market value. So that first bid is massive. The other thing that it does is it gives people a chance to use the software before the event, gets them acclimated. Plus, since there's max bidding, somebody who can't attend the event can put in their max bid before the event starts. And then if they win it, great. If not, then they helped raise money for the charity. So it's a really cool feeling to walk into an event knowing you've raised 30 to 40% of your goal before you even check your first person into the event. That's a really cool feeling. Now, when it comes to percentage of fees covered, this is 90%. This is a pretty average number for our events that we see in the whole ClickBid ecosystem. What this means is that on every credit card transaction, we accept, check, cash, credit, student accounts, whatever you want. But if you pay with credit card, we charge 3.5% in ClickBid. It's a flat fee, covers all the, Amex, Discover, MasterCard, Visa, PCI compliance fees, vault fees, distribution fees, disbursements, all those things. It covers that. And we give the charity the ability to turn that fee on so that donors can opt in to cover it. Would you like to cover the credit card fees for this event? So it's not in addition to credit card fees, and that'll be important in a minute. That is the fees that the charity would assume on a credit card payment. So 90% participation. I think, you'll see here the credit card fees were about $1,200. That means about $1,100 were covered by the donors happily, and now the charity doesn't incur that. So let's take a look at the total cash that came in, or processing. So we had ticket sales of $11,000. This was great. I liked how they did this. They started the pricing as an early bird. I think it was like $40. And by the time it got to the day of the event, if you walked in and wanted to buy tickets, it was $70. So this is great. Couple things happen here. As a charity, you're trying to get as many people into the system beforehand. That's why you would offer an early bird, to incentivize people to buy tickets early. Last year when we did this, we saw a lot of people buying tickets the day of the event, showing up at the event to buy tickets. It really slows things down. Plus, it can give you a lot of anxiety that, is anybody going to be here tonight? So what we did this year was increase the pricing over time, and we saw a lot less participation on the day of to buy tickets. That was great. Sponsorships, you usually want to see, if this is $1,200, $1,200, $1,205, you want to try to raise 12.5 in sponsorships. That way, all of the hard costs for your event are just covered by sponsors. And, sponsors get a lot of recognition at your event before, during, and after social media. Just the philanthropic nature of it, that, hey, we're a company and we're giving back to our community through charities. So we received 10,000 in sponsorships. We did have a alcohol sponsor, so it was about 12,000 actually. The silent auction raised $12,000. The appeal raised 12,000. This is great to see these two numbers coming in about even. The appeal is a point in the event where an auctioneer or an MC or a very vibrant donor will stand up and they will solicit for funds for a specific cause. In this case, it's a very specific, capital campaign, or if you're a school, it might be tuition assistance or scholarships or whatever. But they'll start at a high number, like $1,000 or, $10,000, and they'll see who can give at that amount, and then they'll work their way down. We have a nice display, puts it on the screen, shows the total in real time, people's names, and all that fun stuff. And so we raised 12,000. That's great. That's a great amount of money. The quantity, we raised 2,300 in those two gift cards and the brown bag. The signature item actually did sell. This was awesome. $20,000 is great. Now, the fact that ClickBid does offer you the ability to pay with check or cash is in this example is perfect, because now you can write a check for $20,000 and you don't have to incur any credit card fees. We're not going to ask for a tip. We're not going to ask for any of that stuff. You just write a check and it clears in a couple of days. We know our donors. We trust our donors. So that can help offset. Your credit card fees would have gone up dramatically had that been put into that. So credit card processing fees here, we deduct, $1,200. We deduct the 12.5 that we had in the expenses up above, and we get to 53,500. I did add back in the 1,100 that donors contributed to the credit card fees. So the walk-away money for the charity was about $54,600. Now, that's great, in my opinion. I mean, again, this would be considered kind of on the smaller side of events that we see in the system, in our platform. But one of the things, when we license our software, we just do not want to be a loss for a charity. Meaning, you raise, let's say your silent auction raises a couple $1,000s. We would probably actually steer you away from ClickBid, because we want to be profitable for the charity. I mean, we want our platform $1,500. Now, keep in mind, the $1,500 in this case is annual. From now on, we're going to do a Giving Tuesday campaign at this event, or this organization. We're going to do, a 5K where people can give. We're actually going to, set up some other events. And there's no additional cost for that. So that's a $1,500 one-time annual fee, and it's just out of the way from now on. And we want you to use it as many times as you want, because every time you use it, that money just gets more and more valuable that you spent on that license. So again, keep in mind, $54,600 to walk away with goes into the bank account, and that charity has that money, which is great. This is a big, especially with that 20,000. I just can't, that was amazing that we had, because of the blind bidding before the event started. I don't think this person actually attended the event. In fact, they're a brand new donor. I think somebody, shared this on their social, and somebody thought, wow, what a deal. I'm going to do this. And so now we get to know a new donor and so on, and we get to go home with this kind of money. This is the most we've ever gone home with. It's massive and it's awesome. Now, when you look at these other platforms, what is the big difference between, how ClickBid put this event on and how an organization you would use another platform with the other pricing model, which is a free with fee is what I call it. So 67,200. Did I have a formula? No, I think I took, I know what I did was I took, 67,200 is the amount of money that was raised at the event before any fees or any of that kind of stuff. 67,200. Now, if I put that here, again, a free platform says we don't charge the charity anything. So the charity is going to go home was 67,200 minus any expenses. So if you take 67,000 and you drop off about 11,000, because again, if I go up here, where did I get that number? I take this, and I get 11,000 because ClickBid's not in that if you're using a free platform. So $11,000. That would be $56,000 is what the charity would go home with 56 grand. So they make $1,400 more by using a free platform. Well, but effectively, $1,500 more, because you're not paying that license fee. Now, here's the thing: at 67,000, the way that these platforms, because they're not free, they have to make money, they have to run their services and things, and that's fair. What they do is they will then ask for tips from donors, anywhere between 12 and 17%. Sometimes it's enormous. Now, what we've learned is that let's just take an average of 7%. So if I take 7% on this 6,700, keep in mind this 20,000, they don't allow you to pay with check or cash because the only way that they make money is through tips in processing. So this all gets bundled into a credit processing system. So 67,000 times 7% is $4,704. If you deduct that, your take home is $51,496. However, to be fair, that is a little misleading because the real take home for the charity is $56,200 or 60. Yeah, 56,200. I had to deduct 11,000. The charity won't have to pay the 4,700. And that is the value that this platform is offering to the nonprofit. But this is a fee. What basically the way it boils down, to keep things really, really simple, is the free platforms have said we are going to get our fees from the donor, not the nonprofit. It's really that simple. ClickBid has said we are going to ask the nonprofit to cover the fees like anybody else would: venue, a bar, catering, band, so on. We're asking the charity to cover that, but the free platforms are saying, no, we're not going to ask the charity to cover that. We're going to ask the donors to cover it. So your donors will walk away having paid $4,700 in tips or in fees on your behalf to cover the cost of the event. Now, if you look at the total costs that, get the platform takes home, $4,700 minus, whatever they pay to American Express, Visa, Discover, MasterCard, that's a pretty good lump, chunk of change that a free platform will bring home. So really, I'm not, what I don't want to get into, I've done this before where I've said the good, the bad, the ugly. Well, it's really just, this is the data. And so, you're walking home as a charity with 54,600 and you haven't asked for tips from your donors. You did ask them to cover the 3.5% credit card processing fees. Or you can walk home with, and this is probably, I'm going to change this number to, let's just subtract. So that way it is fair here. 56,200. So you're either going to go home with 54,600 or 56,200, which is what, $1,800 roughly? No, $1,600. I don't know. Now I'm going to get, my math is bad, but your donors have given the platform $4,700 to cover the cost of you choosing to use that platform. So really, the big difference is ClickBid is asking for the nonprofits to cover the cost of the software, and the free platforms are asking the donors, your donors, to cover the cost of the software. And then lastly, keeping in mind that this $4,700 is for this event only. This will continue to be brought up every single event thereafter. So if you do 2 more events this year, in ClickBid, you've paid the $1,500. So a company that charges for a license fee, you've paid it, it's done, and you can run this as many times as you want with no additional costs. Whereas your donors will be asked to cover the costs every time that this event every time an event is run. So anyway, this was hopefully a good example of showing off a little bit of how, we think, I went through this event with this charity, some of the data we got. ClickBid is piloting a new tool that will let you push this data into an AI language model like Gemini and actually do some deep analysis and help give you some insights on how you might be thinking about using ClickBid or for further events this year, but then also some of the items that were really successful, things you should think about for next year, things that worked, things that you should try a little differently. So pretty exciting stuff. And yeah, there you go. Hope that was helpful.